Airports. Tyler Bond despised them. They were an unavoidable part of his job. But that didn't make him like them anymore. Airports had slowly become the enemy of his marriage. They were crowded, filled with people herded like cattle, waiting to be flown off to distant places. Maybe he should just accept it. After all, he was well compensated for enduring this inconvenience. 10 years ago, he would stand in line for check-in, stand in line for security, and then stand in line again at the boarding gate, only to face yet another line once aboard, waiting for everyone ahead of him to stow their luggage in the overhead bins. But now it was different. As an experienced traveler, he no longer needed to check his luggage. TSA pre-check cut through security delays. Years of cross-country travel had earned him perks, priority boarding, better seats, and lounge access. Still, despite the improved experience, he couldn't shake his dislike of the whole process. That day, in the lounge, Veronica, a striking woman in her mid-40s, dressed in a ruffled dress with a deep neckline barely concealed by a cardigan, was making conversation with him. The discussion started casually with her recent travels, but as the conversation deepened, so did her flirtation. Tyler tried to focus on the words, but his gaze kept drifting. He couldn't help but admire her confidence. He shared a few of his own stories, relating tales of travel and war, and before she left, she handed him her business card. He glanced at it briefly, distracted by her presence, and noticed they were both from Denver. That tidbit sparked a few more minutes of conversation before they parted ways. Was she flirting? Possibly. Maybe. It was hard to tell. Decades of marriage had dulled his instincts, and for once, he regretted not recognizing the signs. But it didn't matter. He'd been faithful for 26 years, and that wasn't about to change. As Tyler settled into his spacious economy plus seat for his return flight, his phone rang. It was Rebecca, his wife. He was surprised. It was early in Denver. Maybe something important had happened. His finger hovered over the phone, but ultimately, he turned it off. If it had been one of the kids, he'd have answered, of course. But whatever his wife, the bat, wanted could wait. He couldn't help but reflect on the toll his job had taken on their relationship. It wasn't that he was away too much, rarely more than 6 nights a month, but it had still strained things. The job had promised more money, more success, but it had cost him his connection with Rebecca. She had once pushed him to take the position for the financial gain, but now she was distant. The love they once shared had faded. Tyler loved his children, though. Jamie, his daughter, was thriving in pharmacy school. Mike, his son, was starting engineering courses. Both were intelligent, driven, and, as parents often do, he and Rebecca were proud. Yet Tyler missed them. He missed family dinners, the chaos, the laughter that filled the house when they were younger. They were grown now, with their own homes nearby. Tyler had even thought about downsizing, but Rebecca, she didn't want to hear of it. She loved the house, loved the neighborhood. It gave her the image she wanted. So Tyler sacrificed a little more for her, keeping the large house, the upkeep, the yard. The flight back to Denver was uneventful, or rather, it was just long and tiring. Tyler hadn't slept much during the trip, so he closed his eyes for a brief moment. The next thing he knew, the plane was landing, and his phone lit up with a barrage of missed calls and messages. He immediately called Jamie. "Oh my God, Dad. Thank God you called." Jamie's voice was full of panic. "What's going on? Everyone's trying to reach me, but no one's telling me anything." Tyler's voice was tight with concern. "Well, I'm not going to say anything over the phone. Come by my place, Mike will be here too. I'll explain when you get here." Tyler's heart sank. "Is everyone okay? Your mom?" "Mike, I'm sorry, Daddy," Jamie's voice cracked. "It's a big mess, but no one's hurt. Well, no one we love. We'll talk when you get here." Tyler made it from Denver International Airport to his daughter's house near the university in record time. He knocked on the door hastily, and she was almost in tears when he came in. Mike, his son, was sitting solemnly in a chair, his expression serious. Tyler's heart raced. "What happened, honey?" he asked, his voice full of concern. "Oh, Daddy, we're so sorry. It's a huge mess," Jamie replied, trying to hold back tears. Mike finally spoke, his voice low and calm. It's like a big bazaar. We never meant for this to happen. But here we are. Tell me what happened, Tyler urged, trying to keep his emotions in check. Jamie hesitated, then spoke in a rush. It started about a month ago when you were on your last trip to Boston. I was going to visit Mom during lunch, and as I approached, I saw a Tesla pulling into the garage. I didn't recognize the car, and it was strange. I saw the lights on in the house and the shadows moving. Someone was in the garage. I called Mom, but she didn't answer. Tyler's mind raced. You saw someone at the house? Jamie nodded, her eyes welling up. I didn't think anything of it at first, but then, I don't know, I had this feeling something was wrong. I tried calling her again, but she never picked up. And after that, things just spiraled out of control. Mike leaned forward. You see, that Tesla wasn't just some random car. It belonged to one of Mom's associates. Someone from her charity work. Tyler's heart sank. What are you saying? Dad, we don't know the whole story yet, Jamie said quickly. But it's not good. Mom has been keeping secrets. And this is bigger than we ever imagined. Tyler stood there, processing everything, his mind spinning. What exactly are you telling me? Jamie took a deep breath, then spoke softly. It's like a snowball, Dad. One thing led to another, and now, we're in the middle of it. I waited a few more minutes, then called her again. When she answered, I asked if she was home. She said she was still at work and would talk to me later. I suspected she was lying, so I hung up, parked out of sight, and kept an eye on the house, trying to figure out what to do. After a while, I quietly moved my car and crept to peek through the garage window. Mom's car was there along with the Tesla. That was enough to send a wave of fury through me. I went back to the car, called Mike, and told him what I'd seen. I had to know who was with her. I spent the next 6 hours waiting for him to leave, and when he did, Mike followed him to a large office building in Cherry Creek. He went in shortly after, spoke to the security guard, and learned the man's name. Mike called me with the info. We were at a loss for what to do. The next day, I called Mom, upset that she hadn't answered me earlier, and after that, things between us grew cold. During your last trip, Mike and I watched the house again, and the same thing happened. That's when we decided we needed to act. Mike took the lead. I was there when you checked the smoke detectors a few weeks ago, and when I noticed the detector in the garage, I had an idea. At first, it seemed like a joke. I guess it's not so funny anymore. We were afraid to tell you because we knew you'd want to catch them in the act. Probably end up killing the bastard, and who knows, maybe Mom too, either by accident or on purpose. That would send you straight to jail, and we didn't want that. Our goal was to unsettle them, to embarrass them. I suggested to Jamie that we sneak into the garage around midnight. We'd create one of those freak electrical sparks that sometimes happen with electric cars, just enough to trigger the alarm. The smoke detectors were in perfect working order, so I thought it'd only cause a little trouble with the fire department showing up. I didn't think anything would go beyond that. That's when Tyler spoke up. I didn't know there was a heat detector in the garage, not a smoke detector. Mike's face went pale. Oh crap. That explains why the alarm took so long to go off. Jamie nodded. I thought the fire department showing up would be embarrassing enough, but I guess not. So, I added something of my own. Tyler looked stunned as the implications of what Jamie and Mike had done began to sink in. You did what? He asked. I ordered some Viagra, Jamie said, and since I'm studying to be a pharmacist, it was easy to turn the pills into a liquid. Yesterday, I snuck into the house and checked the wine fridge. Mom had already opened her Magnum bottle, but only a glass or two was missing. So I added my mixture, stirred it in, and put the bottle back. We thought the fire department arriving would be enough to embarrass her and her lover. But I didn't count on how things would unfold. Mike took over the story. Just before midnight, I crawled through the garage window. I had it opened earlier, and it took some time, but I managed to use the car's charging port and some tools to create a spark. I thought it'd be enough to set off the smoke alarm. I didn't know if there was something wrong with his car, but all of a sudden, there was a shower of sparks. I knew it would trigger the alarm, or at least I thought so. I left quickly. Tyler's eyes widened. What happened next? Mike's voice grew quieter. I guess the battery caught fire. By the time the firefighters got there, both his car and Mom's were in flames. The alarm had gone off, and the whole neighborhood could hear it. It was chaos. Jamie added, "You know how Mom is when she gets upset. It's like she loses all sense of reason." Tyler's mind raced. "More interesting than my wife cheating on me and my house burning down?" Jamie nodded. "Oh, you have no idea. When I talked to Mom this morning, she told me she jumped out of bed when she heard the alarm. She tried shaking Eric, but he wouldn't wake up. She panicked, thinking he was dead, and called 911. She dragged him down the stairs, not even thinking that they were both naked. She didn't realize until much later what had happened." Tyler looked at Jamie. "What do you mean?" "Well," Jamie began, "Mom dragged him down the stairs. She didn't notice the nail at the entrance to your bedroom, the one that had popped up and caught my sock a few months ago. That nail was enough to catch him. And since he had been drinking, thanks to the Viagra I spiked in the wine, well, let's just say the nail didn't do him any favors. It cut him in places no one would ever want to be cut." Tyler felt a wave of disbelief. "Are you saying?" Jamie nodded grimly. "Not only did the nail cut him, but with everything else, his body was dragged down the steps, hitting every bump along the way. By the time he hit the concrete porch outside, it was a disaster." Mike cut in. "I didn't feel too bad for the guy, but that's when things got really embarrassing. The whole neighborhood was awake by then, and Mom, still dragging Eric naked through the front door, didn't even realize it. Timothy from across the street recorded the whole thing on his phone and sent it to me. Want to see it?" Tyler stared in disbelief as Mike showed him the video. There, in full view, was Rebecca, his wife, dragging Eric, naked, as his head bounced off the concrete steps. "Oh my God," Tyler muttered, watching the humiliating scene unfold. The fire department arrived just after that, and the ambulance teams covered Mom with an emergency blanket. They turned Eric over, and Tyler noticed the full extent of the damage. His mind raced, but in the end, Tyler felt strangely numb. He had won, but at what cost? The whole neighborhood had seen everything, and the consequences of their actions were irreversible. Mike had some unexpected news for Tyler. Apparently, Eric's electric car had a device that sent an alert to his home phone if something strange happened. Francine, Eric's wife, saw the alert and, realizing his car wasn't where it was supposed to be, rushed over to investigate. Tyler listened intently as Mike continued. "I watched as they tried to bring Eric to consciousness. He was alive but completely unconscious. The paramedics brought a stretcher, but before they could secure him, Francine showed up, furious. She flipped the stretcher, sending Eric crashing face-first onto the sidewalk. The poor guy was going to need more than a few stitches to fix that cut." Tyler tried to assess his feelings. Should he feel bad for Eric? He couldn't recall ever seeing anyone so enraged. Francine landed several powerful blows to Eric's groin before they managed to pull her away, still kicking. As they lifted Eric back onto the stretcher, Tyler noticed something unsettling. His tool, still bleeding, now looked crooked, a stark contrast to how it had been just moments before. Tyler couldn't help but wonder if Eric had finally woken up when they attempted to fix it. He hoped so. Rebecca stood frozen in shock as the neighbors, at least a dozen of them, watched the spectacle unfold. Francine wasn't done. She lunged at Rebecca, but instead of hitting her, she grabbed the emergency blanket covering her, ripping it off and leaving Rebecca exposed. It wasn't long before another blanket was found, but the damage was done. Tyler, still standing across the street, thought to himself, "Damn, I'm going to miss those breasts." But the neighbors definitely didn't miss them or her grooming habits. He winced as it became clear that Rebecca's grooming was no longer a private matter. It was a public spectacle. As the police arrived, the flames were mostly under control, though Eric's car still sparked and smoldered. Francine, practically foaming at the mouth, screamed at the officers to arrest Rebecca. The officers were confused, unsure of the charges, but they led Rebecca, clearly shaken, to the back of a patrol car to separate her from the enraged Francine and the gathering onlookers. Jamie piped up, "We knew Eric was married to Francine, but we didn't know she was the district attorney's daughter. It turns out either she or Eric had enough connections to have Mom taken to the station. They put her in an interrogation room for the rest of the night, dressed only in that blanket. Tyler's eyes widened. What happened next? Jamie sighed. They released her around 6 a.m. when she tried calling you, but you didn't answer. Some people say God isn't merciful, but... He trailed off. Tyler, still processing, asked, "What do you mean?" Well, Mike explained, since Eric didn't wake up immediately, they ran a toxicology report. The only unusual thing they found were trace amounts of Viagra. When Francine heard this, she went ballistic. She was furious because Eric has a bad heart and would never have taken anything like that. At least that's what she said. The paramedics said it was a good thing the fire happened when it did because it got him to the hospital fast enough to prevent him from slipping into a coma. Could have been worse. Tyler raised an eyebrow. Even worse. Mike nodded. Well, as if things weren't bad enough, the police went back to the house this morning to gather evidence. But by then, the firefighters had knocked the wine bottle and glasses off the counter, breaking them. Between the fire, the water, and the remnants of the wine, there's no untouched evidence left to collect. I went there earlier. The only thing the police saw was a bloody trail going down the steps and out the door. They're probably grilling Mom in the interrogation room right now. Everyone thinks Eric took the Viagra, though he wasn't supposed to. Without any real evidence, I'd be surprised if they hold Mom much longer. Tyler smirked. What about the car? They managed to pull the Tesla out of the garage, Mike continued. And this morning, Mom and Francine were all over the news. It wasn't pretty. Tyler, now deep in thought, asked, "Where's Mom now?" Jamie replied, "She's still at the police station. They said they'll call us when we can pick her up." "I'm so sorry, Dad. We should have just told you what we were doing. We were so angry. And in the end, we just made everything worse." A slow smile crept across Tyler's face as he stood up. "I appreciate what you tried to do. Honestly, it means a lot to me. But I don't think you made things worse. Given everything, I think it turned out pretty well. I'm heading home now. Your mother will need you both. You can decide who picks her up." "It won't be me." They nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. On the drive home, Tyler stopped by the bank and transferred half of their accounts into a new account under his name. He planned to handle the rest of the finances later that evening. At the local market, he picked up some garbage bags to take his clothes to the dry cleaners, suspecting that the house now smelled of smoke. When Tyler pulled into the driveway, he didn't focus on the fire damage. What caught his attention was the bloody trail clearly visible across the porch and down the steps. He smiled to himself, almost feeling lighter. Inside, the front door was closed but not locked. The blood trail continued up the steps, and he chuckled. The kitchen, leading to the garage, looked like a battlefield. But Tyler ignored the blood, walked past the mess, and went to the bedroom. He packed his clothes into bags for the cleaners. As he worked, he noticed the bed was unmade, and a brief pang of sadness hit him. But only for a moment. He knew what he needed to do. Divorcing Rebecca was the obvious first step. From there, separating finances, finding an apartment, and using his newfound freedom to travel and spend more time with the kids sounded perfect. Tyler even wondered if Mike could send him the video. He'd forward it to the local news. Rebecca's volunteer organizations would love the extra exposure, especially in this context. As he loaded the last bag into his car, a police car pulled up. The officer asked for his identification. With all the events of the day replaying in his mind, Tyler smiled. He could tell the officer was awkward, likely aware of the situation and possibly even the video. "Are you going to be okay?" the officer asked. Tyler's smile grew. "I'm going to be just fine, officer. Rest assured, I'm going to be just fine." As the officer drove away, Tyler thought about how everything had unfolded. In the end, he wasn't sure if it was divine justice or just fate. But either way, it had been a hell of a ride. "Thank you for listening until the end," Tyler said, speaking as if addressing an unseen audience. "See you in the next video."